in which Mrs. Gopal will defend the academic thesis, the age range axis and accelerated aging in COPD. And I welcome the candidate, of course, and lots of success. I also welcome the promotion team, Professor Wouters and Dr. Reinhardt, and of course the members of the opposition, whom you will meet later. But before we start the opposition, I give you, Ms. Gopal, the word to tell family and friends what is your thesis about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prorector. I would first of all like to welcome the members of the committee, my family, friends, and colleagues. In the next 15 minutes, I will provide a background information and present some of the findings from my thesis. Okay, and my thesis is entitled with the age range axis and the accelerated aging in COPD. And COPD is an abbreviation for the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is very prevalent non-curable lung disease. As you can see in the graph on the slide, this disease occurs more in the people of the older age with a prevalence of 20% over the age of 60. This graph also shows that the COPD is more prevalent in the man compared to the women. Globally, it is estimated at the time of 2050, there are 600 million people are affected with the COPD. Okay, next, the COPD is the lung disease that is primarily caused by the smoking, which causes the damage to the lungs. Damage to the airways causes the airway to become inflamed and narrowed, blocked by the excess mucus production, which is called as chronic bronchitis. Damage also causes to the alveoli where exactly the gas exchange takes place. This loss of alveoli called as emphysema and causes the lungs to lose their elasticity and leads to the less uptake of the oxygen. COPD patients can have a chronic bronchitis or emphysema or both. Importantly, both chronic bronchitis and emphysema lead to the similar symptoms, shortness of breath, especially during a physical activity. But as the disease progresses, the shortness of the breath will be very severe in a daily routine. COPD patients also suffer from a persistent cough, often with the mucus and the sputum production. How to diagnose this disease? Doctor diagnosed the COPD based on the lung function test or the spirometry. This particular test measures how much air you can breathe in and breathe out and how fast you can do this. Two values are very important, that is FEV1 and FEVC. The FEVC represents the total amount of the air you can forcefully exhale after first taking the deep breath in. FEV1 indicates how much air you can exhale after 1 second. The ratio of FEV1 and FEVC, if it is less than 0.70, then the person is diagnosed with the COPD. Here, in this, I'm going to show a lung trajectory where the green line on the graph of this slide shows that the natural decline in the lung function takes place over the age of 40. It also shows that the decline in the lung function is faster in COPD patients, that is represented in red, compared to the non-COPD controls. You can also see in the graph that some COPD patients fail to develop a full lung function in a childhood, the black line, and have a decline in adulthood that is similar to the controls. This graph illustrates that the lung function takes at the time of diagnosis cannot distinguish if COPD is caused by the problem of a lung growth or the accelerated loss. The lung function also does not allow to predict how fast the lung function can be lost with the near future. Another issue with the lung function is that it cannot discriminate between the emphysema and the bronchitis. So the CT image was made. Here you can see that normal lung and the emphysematous lung. On the normal lung in the left hand side and the emphysematous at the right hand side, and the arrow represents the loss of alveoli. And next, here the monitoring and especially predicting the disease progression is very difficult based on the lung function test. There is an urgent need to find a blood biomarker to predict the disease progression and distinguish between the different subtypes like emphysema and bronchitis to provide a personalized approach for patients. Among the various blood biomarkers that have been studied in COPD, RAGE, or the receptor for advanced glycation and products, comes out as one of the promising biomarker. RAGE is named after the first ligand shown to bind the receptor, which are called as advanced glycation end products. RAGE is a receptor that is present in the large amounts in the membranes of the cells in the alveoli. In the schematic on the slide, RAGE is represented as a lock and the advanced glycation end product as a key. Once when the keys are locked in the lock, they turn on the signaling within the cells, which lead to the inflammation and damage, which are two important components of the components to drive the COPD disease. There are also forms of a RAGE that are not sitting in the cell membrane. We call these as a soluble RAGE, or the S-RAGE in short. Here, these when they bind to a ligand, they doesn't activate the inflammation or a damage. In fact, these forms can prevent inflammation or a damage by neutralizing the ligands. Soluble RAGE can be produced within the cell. A soluble RAGE can be produced within the cell with a specific RNA, which are called as a ES-RAGE. And there is one more form called as a S-RAGE, which is produced by a cleaving or a shedding of the membrane RAGE. In our studies, we focused on both ES-RAGE and S-RAGE. Advanced glycation end products are the ligand to a RAGE, or we can represent it as a keys. These AGEs are produced naturally inside the body when glucose and proteins undergo a complex chemical reaction to form AGEs. The formation of AGEs takes many hours to days, and there are many types of AGEs are formed. These AGEs are very toxic. When they bind to the RAGE, they cause inflammation and damage. They can also bind to a long-lived proteins which are present in the skin and the eye, and which cannot be removed and accumulated over time. Not only they can be formed inside the cell, but they can enter the body through the food. Mainly in the Western diet, like a grilled or a barbecued food contain a high amount of AGEs. They provide a food, a brown color and a rich flavor. Also, the cigarette smoke, the largest risk factor for the COPD, is a major source of AGEs. Although RAGE was highly researched in COPD, no data on AGEs were available at the time of my studies. Based on the background information, the first aim of the thesis was to detailed examination of the age-RAGE axis in the COPD. In the chapter 4 and the 6 of my thesis, we could first of all confirm the decreased S-RAGE levels in the blood of the COPD patients compared to the ex-smoking and never smoking controls. Here you can see in this graph. All the studies in COPD, including the data I showed, measure the total amount of the soluble RAGE. This includes both ES and the S-RAGE, as I explained it before. In chapter 6, we measured the ES-RAGE from a pharma specifically and found that there was a decrease in ES-RAGE levels in COPD compared to the ex and never smoking controls. Importantly, we observed a positive correlation of S-RAGE with the lung function. That means the lung function decreases. Lower the S-RAGE levels are also detected in the blood of the COPD patients. On the right-hand side, you can see as the emphysema is worse, lower the S-RAGE levels are detected in the blood of the COPD patients. However, for ES-RAGE, we did not observe this kind of a correlation, what we observed for the S-RAGE. This implies shedding of the RAGE is more closely related to the lung function loss in COPD. In the next slide, I'll be showing the data on the advanced glycation end products in COPD. Because AGEs are formed through the complex chemical reactions, there are many types of AGEs with different properties. Interestingly, some are fluorescent, can be visualized through the fluorescent readers or detectors. Fluorescent AGEs are trapped in the skin, can be measured non-invasively using such fluorescent detector device called as an AGE reader. In the picture on the left-hand side, you can see the measuring of the skin autofluorescence in the forearm using the AGE reader. this has been done in the chapter 3. On the right hand side, you can see there is an increased level of the skin autofluorescence in COPD patients comparing to the ex-smoking and never smoking controls. Here I didn't show the data. That is the negative correlation of the skin autofluorescence and lung function was also observed. In addition to the skin, we also measured free floating or the ages which are present in the blood also. The one particular age is a CML, which was found to be decreased in COPD compared to the ex and never smoking controls. The another age, that is a CEL, which was found to be increased in COPD compared to the ex and never smoking controls. In the second part of my thesis, we examined COPD as a result of accelerated aging. Again, I'm showing the same lung trajectory here. You can see that the lung function naturally declines in a normal aging over age of 40. This decline is accelerated in COPD. Importantly, there are indications that not only the lung function decline more rapidly in COPD, but that also the lung tissues and the entire body age more quickly in COPD. From this, it is believed that the COPD is a driver driven by the biological mechanism that cause aging. In this figure, I can show the 12 such biological mechanisms that drive the aging or aging. The previous studies in COPD have typically examined only one marker of the aging. In chapter 7 of my thesis, on the other hand, we analyzed the entire panel of markers representing different mechanisms of aging in the blood of the COPD patients. In this presentation, I'll show the data relating only to the two markers. The first one is the telomere length. What are these telomeres? Telomeres are the end caps of the end caps present on the chromosomes, which protects the chromosomes, as your shoelace will be protected by a plastic wrap. Like that, the chromosomes are also protected by the telomeres. In the chapter 7, we measured the telomere length in the COPD, which was decreased, shortened in the white blood cells compared to the smoking controls and the never smoking controls. Also, the patients with a lower lung function had a shorter telomere compared to the patients with a better lung function. Here I'm showing another marker, the second marker, which is an anti-aging molecule named as a sirtuin-1. It can interfere with the various mechanisms of the aging. In COPD patients, the expression of this anti-aging molecule was decreased compared to the smoking controls and the never smoking controls. Similar results were found for other anti-aging molecules we measured. In conclusion, the blood SRAge is decreased in COPD and can be an indicator of a lung function and emphysema. Skin autofluorescence is increased in COPD, can be a non-invasive indicator of a lung function. Blood ages are differentially affected in COPD. And in the second part, the accelerated aging based on the various aging markers, only a shorter telomeres are related to the lower lung function based on telomere length. COPD patients are 7 years older versus non-COPD controls. I want to thank you for your attention and give the word back to the prorector. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, very clear presentation. We will now start the opposition. And the first opponent is also the chair of the assessment committee, Professor Bast. And Professor Bast is Professor of Human Toxicology in the University of Venlo and Maastricht. Professor Bast.
Yeah, thank you, Prorector. Dear candidate, first of all, I would like to congratulate you with your beautiful thesis. I've read it with pleasure and great interest. It is written in a very concise way and rapidly formulated. So you formulate very fast and you make sometimes very big steps. And it is nice because that makes it easy and fun to read. That's important. But at the same time, sometimes because you make such large step, you are inclined to stop. And then you think, and you start to wonder, is it correct what you are stating? And I have some examples of that, because this is the right opportunity to discuss these problems with you that I had during the reading your thesis. And the first point I would like to raise is table number 1, page number 14. You have a very nice table. You compare aging processes with process in COPD, and all the arrows in the table point in the same direction. Only the arrow about telomere length does not point in the same direction. And I wonder, what is happening here? Why is that? Can you explain that? Why the aging has an other arrow than the COPD in that table?
Thank you for your words, highly esteemed opponent. Yeah, if I understood right, in the first table we showed the for the telomeres, both the arrows for the COPD and the aging has shown in the same direction, that is decreasing. Yeah.
Do you have the table at hand with you? Do you see the table in your manuscript? Because that is not the case in your table. They do not point in the same direction. That is my problem. But I would also have expected that they would point in the same direction, as exactly what you say.
Yes, it should be on the same direction, because it's we are trying to prove that the COPD as an accelerated aging. That means that aging is also in aging also, like when a person will be growing older, the telomere has to be decreased. This is the condition. Maybe it's a technical, I mean, the printing error or a writing error, or I believe.
Ah, okay. That's a very simple answer. It's just a mistake.
Yes.
Okay. That is the easiest answer you can give, to be honest. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe that is yes, that is true. It has to be in the same direction.
I expected it, because you measured it yourself, the telomere length with COPD, and you see then, and even we also some years ago we also measured telomere length in COPD patients, and we also found a decrease in telomere length. So also that is so aging and COPD, without any exception, everything points in the same direction. That is your final conclusion of this table. Okay, so that is the final conclusion. Everything points in the same direction. I have another question. Also something that I wondered when I read it, I thought, hey, is this correct? Page number 19, you state that RAGE is highly expressed in many tissues in the developing embryo, but the expression decreases in all tissues except for the lungs. In the lungs, RAGE remains very highly expressed. And you connect the conclusion to that because you say, because it is highly expressed in the lungs, RAGE, that means that it plays a crucial role in lung homeostasis. And I wonder, is that conclusion correct? The fact that it's highly expressed, you state, that also means that it plays an important role in the lungs. Is that a correct conclusion? Can you discuss a little bit on that, what you're thinking about it?
Yes, the RAGE is actually involved in the physiological as well as a pathological roles. We can see in as in case in the development of this lung, the RAGE is very important. So these can be proven by the animal studies where there is a overexpression of the RAGE causes the loss means emphysema, and the knockout of the RAGE will be showing a protection towards the emphysema. That's the one thing on the one hand. And similar to the COPD, what we can see, and also in the on the physiology, as RAGE is very important, as their expression will be increased slowly, but not really in the embryo. It was a bit less, but as it grows older, the expression will also increases.
But because I had a little bit problems with your reasoning that the fact that it's highly expressed in the lungs, you connect to that the conclusion that therefore it has to be important in the lungs.
No.
Is the conclusion correct?
No.
So that is too fast. Do you agree that is too fast if you make that link?
Yeah, that's too far, I believe.
Yeah, and I agree, because in pharmacology we also have orphan receptors. They're called orphan receptors. They are receptors, highly expressed in some situations, but as far as we know, not a function whatsoever in that particular organ. So I agree with you. That is not necessarily the case. But you make in page 19 that direct connection between highly expressed and therefore plays a crucial role. But that is not the case. That is. Okay, yeah. You see, then when I was reading this, your thesis, I several times had that feeling that I said, hey, this goes too fast. And then you stop reading and think a little bit about it. But that is fun, because that means that you have interest in the thesis. That is the way you evaluate the thesis, and you start thinking, no, is that correct what the candidate says here? That is what happens. Another point, for example, is proposition number 5. I can read the proposition for you. Studying a single biomarker for a clinical syndrome as COPD is a mission impossible. What do you mean with that proposition?
Actually, the COPD is not a sole or a single disease, because it is associated with the many comorbidities, comorbid conditions, like cardiovascular or coronary artery diseases and diabetes, osteoporosis, and so many mental illness, and so many cachexia, and these things are associated. So when you take into account of only the COPD and taking into account of only a single biomarker, this will mislead, I believe. So instead of going for the single biomarker, we should go for a panel of a biomarker which can be more beneficial, I believe. For example, the lung function and the marker for the inflammatory, or I mean the IL-6 or IL-8, and also the RAGE. It's very promising and prominent. So if you make a combination or the panel, so it gives a better idea and a better explanation for the to make it understand easily, I believe. So that is the explanation for my 5th proposition.
Yeah. But because then perhaps you did not formulate it correctly, this proposition, because you say studying a single biomarker. You can always study a single biomarker. There is no harm in that. And you in fact did that. But what you mean is, of course, in the clinical, let's say, relevance, that is a single biomarker is not that important. You need to have more biomarkers at the same time. That is what you mean, in fact. So for clinical situation, you need more biomarkers at the same time. But you can study a single biomarker. So the formulation is a little bit not correct there, I would say.
Yes, I agree.
Because you studied it yourself as a single biomarker, you see?
Yeah.
So that proposition should be phrased a little bit differently, I would say then. Do you agree?
Yeah.
But then the next question comes, how do you combine biomarkers then? What do? Do you count them up, or do you have a way to have several biomarkers at the same time to reflect COPD status? How do you do that? Let's say you have 5 biomarkers, you measure 5 things, and then what then? Do you combine them somehow, count them, make a sum of these biomarkers, or what do you do?
For example, if I have 5 biomarkers, out of that was like, because if you consider at this moment, I think it's too early to say for the RAGE, because we don't have at this moment the cutoff values for the RAGE. For IL-8 and IL-6, yes, we have, and CRP4 also we have cutoff values, but for RAGE we don't have. If you have a cutoff values for all these 5 or 4 biomarkers, then it's easy to compare and say, oh, okay, what is the status? Like what kind of inflammation he's having, or what's the kind of progression he's having, like that. And also, like along with that, we have a lung function as one of the biomarkers. So yeah, I believe it's very easy to proceed further.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you for your answers. I'm satisfied with your answers, and I give the word back to the prorector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bast, for your position. The next opponent is also a member of the assessment committee, and that's Professor van der Vliet. He's a professor of pathology and laboratory medicine in the University of Vermont, and that is in the USA, where it is now almost 6:30 or so, and 7:30. And I thank you for coming all the way from Vermont, albeit online. Professor van der Vliet.
Thank you, Prorector. And dear candidate, I want to join a previous opponent in congratulating you with your nice thesis. I also read with much interest, and I was impressed with the scope of the work. There's a lot of human studies and analysis and correlation and analysis involved in it. Now, since I'm a biochemist by background, I tend to focus more on the mechanistic aspect of things. So my questions will relate more to that. So let's start with chapter 3, and you also touched on in your introductory comments, where you measured these different age products in serum from COPD patients, and you find that one of them, carboxymetal lysine, is decreased, But two other ones that you measured, carboxyethylysine and pentosodine, are increased. Now, since they are all thought to be coming from a similar glycation mechanisms, how do you explain this? Can you comment on this? Why do you think that is?
Thank you for your words, highly esteemed opponent. Yes, you are right. These are the same structured chemical molecules, but these molecules, yeah, they are from the carbonyl or the lipid source, but their functions, as they are similar in structure, but they have a different functions and different excretion rates and things. So I think, for example, in CML, we've observed that this is decreased. And this is a very best ligand for the RAGE. It has been shown in the studies. And maybe I believe, yeah, because of the binding or because of the excretion, these will be altered for example, in the CML. In case of a pentosodine and CEL, pentosodine, it's a highly cross-linking, and CEL is also highly cross-linking, and they are capable of cross-linking on the long-lived proteins. Maybe that's one thing. The difference will be shown, I believe, though they are from the same origin.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, maybe to follow up on this then. So all of them are ligands for the RAGE receptor, right? But do you think they're equally potent ligands, or and maybe what you should also consider is the relative amounts? I think that from your table, I thought that carboxymethylaser was the most prominent one that you measured. So so change in those may have more biological impact than the other ones. Would you agree with that, or?
No, actually, the each of them, means all of them are toxic, and each of them having a different function.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I believe I don't say that the CML is important and this is not. So I don't say.
Well, in fairness, I think this is still a very, very open question, right? I think there's still a lot we don't know about this. So thank you for your answer there. So I wanted to move on to chapter 4. I'm interested chapters 4 and 5, actually. I want to discuss them kind of in combination, because you're talking about the role of hypoxia and oxygen therapies in COPD and how that relates to these outcomes, so these biomarkers that you measure. So I wanted to first ask for some clarification. In the COPD studies that you used, so you had a group of patients that underwent oxygen therapy, but I didn't see much detail about what that means. Can you explain it a little bit better? What did that entail? And
actually, in the group of COPD patients, there are certain patients which are having a bronchitis or the emphysema, so they are having a difficulty in breathing. At that moment, they are supplemented with the external oxygen source. So in our study, we observed that the group of patients who are taking external oxygen therapy, in them the S-RAGE, which is present in the blood, was decreased compared to the stable COPD patients. So that was the difference we observed. Am I right?
That's I think what you showed us, right? Yeah. Yeah. But my question really was, what does it mean? Do they receive 100% oxygen, or for how long? What can you describe that a bit better? What does that mean practically for the patient? I presume they get 100% oxygen. Is that correct? Or maybe
yes.
A higher amount of oxygen than
higher amount of oxygen for a long term. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it is not for the intermittent oxygen or something. It's a continuous oxygen supply. It was given to them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you are using these, which I really liked, the mouse studies to try and get into some more mechanistic aspects of this, right? So you used a mouse model in which you subject to hypoxia, right? I guess I was actually curious about whether you also considered hyperoxia, but you used hypoxia. So one thing in your thesis, you described that you followed these mice, their food intake and weight. I didn't see any data in the thesis about that. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about it, if you recall. I know these studies are some years ago. But since these mice had a very low oxygen saturation after hypoxia, which was striking to me, I was just curious about their overall well-being and whether these mice are actually losing weight or whether they are eating normally. Can you clarify this?
Um,
I'm not sure if you did these studies yourself with the animals or whether.
No, it was a collaboration with some other part of the
Okay.
yeah, and the person who handled was different and the person who analyzed was different. So.
Okay, so you may not really know the answer to this. Okay, then I'll leave it alone. So, but then in this hypoxia-induced mouse model, you find the S rates to be increased.
Yes.
Right, which is contrasting to what you find in COPD patients, which also claim to undergo or to have some features of hypoxia. So that seems to me a bit of a disconnect to me. How do you want to answer that, or do you have a response to that?
The rage or the S rage, they have a kind of acute and a chronic. How to say, their expression will be changing based on the acute and the chronic treatments, one thing, and the other thing was like what we observed in the lung and also the systemic circulation was totally opposite in the hypoxic mouse condition. And the other thing was like with when we did a small pilot study on the sleep apnea as well. There also we observed the intermittent hypoxic conditions. At that moment also we observed the same thing. So the hypoxia is totally how to say, yeah, it is totally different from what we observed on the COPD.
Okay. So one other thing I noted in the table, I think I forgot what page it's on, but that when you segregated these patients that underwent oxygen therapy and not, and those that did not, their smoking status is also very different. So I think that also should be considered. And you didn't really, in my mind, discuss that or acknowledge that very clearly, but I think that may also have an impact on the S-rates status, right?
Yes.
You do talk about it in your discussion in the end. So I appreciated that part. So you did acknowledge that to some extent. So my last question then is, so we talked about biomarker and
short question, a short answer.
This is a short one, yes. So given everything that you've learned from all these experiments, do you still believe that S-rates is a good biomarker for COPD?
Not exactly to the disease progression, or I can say that there are more studies which are supporting this hypothesis that this is a best biomarker, because you can see that in a central lobular emphysema, this is a very promising biomarker. So I think in combination with the others to state the presence and the progression of the disease, you have to have more biomarkers together along with the S-stage, I believe.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll hand back to the director.
Thank you very much, Professor van der Vliet, for your position. The following opponent is Professor Opperhuizen. He's also the member of the assessment committee. He is Professor in Risk Assessment and Risk Communication in Toxicology in the University of Maastricht. And for today, he has also accepted the role of Secretary of this assessment committee, for which I'm very grateful. Professor Opperhuizen.
The candidate, we are almost halfway with the defense of the thesis, so that's the good news, and there's a lot of other good news. You have a lot of well-cited papers, so congratulations with that, and particularly also congratulations with that you found the energy to finalize the process of the PhD, which is consuming a lot of energy, in particular on the circumstances you have. I go a little bit in a more generic way. I focus first on the introduction. In the introduction on page 9, you introduce some generic words on aging. And then on the end of the second paragraph, you refer to the antagonistic pleiotrophic theory of Williams. And then you go in the next line to another theory. And maybe you introduce a third one on page 10, or page 9, where you say there is accumulation of free radical damage. Then you continue with the idea, these theories on aging all remain still theories that guide scientists in the development and formulation of their hypothesis and in design of their own experiments. But then I continued reading and I did not find a hypothesis. Can you explain a little bit on which theory you base your work and what your hypothesis should read?
Thank you for your words, the highly esteemed opponent. And yeah, you're right. We started with the different aging hypothesis and the free radical theory, inflammaging, and yeah, there are several theories to hypothesis. But yeah, at this moment, like you're asking me, like what's on what basis you are hypothesizing for the our study, right? So
yeah, you formulate at least three which are slightly different. The pleiotrophic theory, the disposable soma theory, and the accumulation theory are not identical. So do you distinguish between that, and what do you contribute?
As we all know that the COPD is associated with the more inflammation, and also there is a more oxidative stress as well. But in our and S-RAGE was also a great antioxidant, S-RAGE. But as a membrane rage, yes, it is a more inflammatory. So in our hypothesis, we are towards the inflammaging, that is inflammation associated aging.
Right. On the next page, on page 10, you formulate a fourth theory, which goes into the formulation of, well, maybe there are lack of protection mechanisms. So is it now more the idea of it is general physiology only, or it is an accumulation of radicals, radical damage, or it is a... So I don't get your theoretical concept.
If I'm right, it's a theoretical concept on aging. What we wrote was like confusing. Is it right?
Yeah, also the definition of aging, and in particular on healthy aging, is a little bit complicated for me. Can you explain a little bit on what you mean by healthy aging? It's in the introduction in the second paragraph.
Yes, in general, that is true. As we grow older, there is a lot of physiological changes will be occurring. For example, like systemic inflammation will be very persistent. That's a low-grade systemic inflammation you can see, and there is an accumulation of oxidative stress that is also very mild, and also yeah, telomere shortening you can see. What all we studied in case of accelerated aging, those things are really milder, like mitochondrial applications, and these things will be really mild, and anti-aging molecules are also started declining. So this is the steam means the which is happening in the normal aging.
Yeah, the difficulty I have with healthy aging is that health is an outcome and aging is a process. So accelerated aging is a process which goes faster. It can also be slower. But healthy aging is a strange combination of the outcome and the process. Do you understand what I mean with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that healthy aging is a very popular term, but it is not really a scientific term, I think.
I think, yes.
Then about the process. In the thesis, you say that tobacco smoking is one of the most contributing factors, external factor which may cause major cause of COPD, 80%. You refer to that. But in the introduction, you also say that COPD will increase over time. So the future, there will be an increase in COPD. But in general, smoking rates are going down. Don't you expect then COPD is going down?
I think this is difficult because I said, yes, that is true. I said like the smoking is the major major confounder, but along with that, our lifestyle and the pollutants or the other things what we are occupational hazards are also the other confounders for the COPD. I mean, not confounder. It's other.
But that is already the case in the estimation. So at present, the estimation is about 80% is caused by smoking, or smoking the main factor, and 20% or at least 20% is caused by other factors. But if within the 80% smoking is going down, then COPD rates will go down.
Yeah, in this case, true. That has to be in the same direction.
Or there may be alternatives. Maybe you can, it's not the field you studied, but maybe you can think a little bit about it. There are a lot of other type of smoking products. It's also the e-cigarette, vaping. Do you expect something in terms of COPD from that area?
If I'm right, you're asking for the other smoking, means the household smoking and
Well, yeah. If the regular smoking of tobacco products is going down, maybe other products may increase, and they still may cause COPD, or maybe even worse. I don't know who's talking now.
Yeah, no. Actually, I got a different picture, so I was confused. Yes, you're right. The smoking is going down, but the for quitting smoking, there are different methods. They are also having implications. I mean, they are also having contributors for the COPD. Something I read in the recent article. That is something different. And also the household smoke is also another hand, like in case of developing countries, but not in the Western countries. Maybe, as you said, for quitting smoking, they have to go on e-cigarettes or some other alternative methods. Maybe they are also having some implications on the for the compensating that percentage, if I'm right.
Well, we will see if you're right. Thank you very much for the discussion. It's also the way of thinking, and I'm very happy with what you responded. And I give the word back to the prorector.
Thank you very much, Professor Opperhuizen. We now come to the following opponent, who's also a member of the assessment committee. That's Dr. Simons, and he's assistant professor and pulmonologist in the Maastricht University Medical Center. Dr. Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Prorector. Dear candidate, first of all, also my congratulations with this thesis, and also congratulations to your team. I really enjoyed reading it, and I think you have a lot of sound scientific work, which I've cited in the past. So I think it's really nice that we now can have a chat about your work. I wanted to start with proposition number 7. So I don't know if you want to read it aloud yourself, or shall I read it for you?
I think I can read this. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, esteemed opponent. So I'm going to read loudly the 7th proposition, that is a biomarker-based research must integrate lung function trajectories to differentiate between obstructive disease conditions of the small lungs.
Thank you very much. So if I'm correct, you say that you would want to integrate biomarker with some kind of trajectories that can discern smaller lungs with COPD. So I wondered, in terms of your results, how do you see then these biomarkers, and specifically, do you foresee a role of SRH within the biomarkers and lung function trajectories?
I can thank you, sir, for your words and questions. And I think I can say that the SRH was showed a positive association with the lung function first thing, and also it showed a positive association with the DLCO. That's a one thing. And the other thing was, if we adopt or if we accept the SRH as a biomarker in our study or in COPD, then we need a lung function as one of the other biomarker panel to confirm the existence of the disease. And we can use the SRH as a marker for the progression or to a specific phenotype, I believe.
Okay, thank you so much. And so I think you've shown indeed the association between lung function and SRH, but I'm still wondering if the biomarker can add to the trajectories, as you state in the proposition, it can help you differentiate between COPD and smaller lungs. So that was in the proposition. So I wondered, what is your idea about that?
Exactly lung function trajectories based on the spirometry, it is difficult to go for the smaller details, I believe. And there are recent articles which are talking more about the IOs, I mean impulsive oscillometry or something. Yeah, that is a new older technique, but it is coming up recently. It is it is giving more details towards the specification about the lung function. So at that condition, yes, that is true for SRH also. When what happens to the early life of a patient is also important. So when we compare these smaller details with the in a longitudinal studies, that may be more beneficial, I believe, to standardize. So after that, I think we can combine with the biomarker. But lung functions are really important for as one of the markers.
Okay, so you say that SRH might give some more granularity towards the trajectory. So I want to follow up on this. So you propose SRH as a marker for COPD. And then along your thesis, you mention, I think you're correct in that it might not be a general marker for COPD, but might be preferable a marker for emphysema in itself in COPD. So you allude to different kind of mechanisms. First of all, maybe it's just like passive, it's like destruction of the pneumocytes type 1, or it's inflammation based. So I wondered, so if I have a patient with COPD, he or she can go in different directions. He or she can either develop a more emphysema-like COPD process or more a bronchitis. So if in a patient with COPD, SRH would steer towards the emphysema, what would be the specific mechanism? I don't think it can be only inflammation or only destruction. So can you tell us a bit more about how would SRH steer more towards emphysema in the COPD phenotype?
I don't say it will be staying more towards the emphysema, but I think there are less literature on the bronchitis, like how these will be varied. The SRH will be varied in case of a bronchitis. I think there are less studies, but in case of emphysema, there are more animal studies we can look into, like how the developmental issues and how the RAGE knockout and RAGE overexpression will be protective, and the other way was more destructive, like a more emphysema test. So on top of that, we are also having a human studies which are showing that this can be a good marker for the central lobular emphysema. So I think based on this, so it is standing towards the emphysema, I think more studies needed, like how the mucus production or how those bronchitis will be affecting and how the SRH will be standing towards that is another important thing. I think we should look more into.
So you say it's more the amount of evidence that's been gathered for emphysema and less for chronic bronchitis. Okay, that's your point. So the last thing I just want, because I'm also a clinician working with patients with COPD. I'm currently developing a clinical care pathway, and I'm looking into the future. So we have a clinical care pathway in 2030. And I wondered if you could help me a bit, because I want to apply SRH in my clinic. Say all the technical specifications are correct and you have a cutoff point. How do you see SRH in the clinic? Do you see it as a severity marker in my patients or as a diagnostic marker in my patients? What's your idea? And also, how do you come to that idea? What's your hypothesis on that? Could you allude on it a bit more on that?
I think in combination with the lung function, I think this can stand as an and also along with the lung function and detailing of the lung function along with the SRH, like how this will be altering from the smoking history to the occurrence of the disease. Like means I think we should study this, like that course of changes. First we have to study and then make a cutoff point for the SRH, and I think based on that, along with the spirometry, or I mean the lung function test, I think we can come up like how we detect for the IL-6 and IL-8 as one of the markers for the inflammatory. Like that, I think we can put forward for the SRH as well, one of the biomarker for the disease progression, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I want to give the floor back to the projector.
So it's muted.
Thank you very much. I said thank you, Dr. Simons, for your opposition. And the following opponent is Dr. Remels. He's assistant professor in inhalation toxicology in the University of Maastricht. Dr. Remels, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, I would like to join my fellow opponents in congratulating you with the completion of this nice thesis. I also want to involve your team in this. We all realize it was not an easy task due to the time that has passed and the distance between Maastricht and India. So my compliments for that. Nevertheless, of course, I have prepared some questions, and I would also like to refer to one of the propositions, and I will read it for you. I was reading proposition number 2, which says skin autofluorescence could be a potential non-invasive biomarker for COPD. And then I thought, well, this is great and very easy if that's true. And then I was looking into your introduction and I read that pentosidine is an H and is yellow-brown fluorescent, so that might be an ideal candidate. So then I was reading chapter 3, in which you did some blood measurements, but also the skin autofluorescence. And then I was a little bit surprised to see that the pentosidine, or at least the autofluorescence in the skin was up, but pentosidine in the plasma was the same. Can you comment on that, please?
Thank you for your words, esteemed opponent. Yes, it's the formation of ages, how it is like very complicated. And there are, I said like in my presentation, there are lots of different forms of the ages. Yes, in my study, as you said, it is right. The pentosidine was like not significantly altered, but there are other the intermediate molecules which are really fluorescent as well, to take into consideration for that as well, because I look for pentosidine, but that is not really the only one molecule which is going to stuck in the skin or the long-lived proteins. There are other molecules as well. Yeah, for this there is a not only the what we studied in the disease condition, and there is another paper or another article, I can say that it's on the how to say, population-based study was also done on the skin autofluorescence and the relation to the lung function. That was also very promising. It was, yes, you can accept this as one of the non-invasive biomarkers. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Of course, it's true that there are many intermediates, but also different fluorescent agents that may contribute to this apparent contradiction. I was thinking maybe to go into the details of the measurements with you, but due to time, I would like to move on a little bit. So I read chapter 4, which you also assessed the ages in the blood. And I was surprised to see that in chapter 4, you did not find a difference in CML in the COPD patients, but in chapter 3, you did. And then I thought, okay, that's surprising. Maybe it has something to do with the methodology. And then I saw that you used 2 different techniques to measure these ages in chapter 3 and 4. One is HPLC or LCMS, and chapter 4, the ELISA. So which, in your opinion, is the best?
I think the HPLC chromatography based is a very sensitive technique to identify. For example, I can say when you are going for the staining for the ages in the tissues, there are some discrepancies because when you go into the detailing, like why there is a discrepancy, and there are several articles based to explain that condition, because the ages are capable of changing the epitopes due to the very harsh treatments. So that might be one reasoning for the alterations or the changes you can see.
Okay.
So I tell the HPLC and the chromatography are the best ones compared to the ELISA.
Okay, that's clear. Going into that a little bit, so I was reading also, of course, the introduction, which was very, very well structured. And there you state that ages can activate a RAGE receptor, as you elegantly showed in your presentation. And this downstream can lead to pathways such as inflammation, oxidative stress, which in their turn can contribute to COPD. And then I thought, well, that's a beautiful working mechanism of these ages and this receptor. But then when I was reading the following chapters, and mainly chapter 3, 4, and 6, where you describe changes or no changes in the ages or the receptor, I was very surprised to see that you do not find any correlation with inflammatory markers that you measured. For example, in chapter 3, no correlation with CRP. Chapter 4, no correlation with IL-6, CRP. And chapter 6, the same thing, no correlation with CRP. So is your working mechanism still correct, or do you want to reconsider that?
Not only in my study, I didn't observe the correlation with the inflammatory markers, but that is true with the some of the studies as well. When I was started, like only one study which was showing that the correlation with the IL-8, but yeah, I think as you said, the expecting is true. It has to show association with the inflammatory marker, but unfortunately we didn't observe that.
Yeah. That's of course possible. An hypothesis can be proven true or false. So, but then my follow-up question would be, aren't you looking in the wrong compartment? Because you look at the skin, very interesting. The blood also, it's a little bit invasive, but also interesting. But what really matters is the lung. Shouldn't you be focusing on RAGE and inflammation in the lung compartment?
Yes, you're right. But at the same time, how important the lung is, but at the same time, the circulation is also important to find a marker, right? Like if you go into the lung, every time I can't cut the piece of lung to go further, right? So maybe I'm harsh. And so we need to find a good or the best biomarkers or the markers which is easy to handle and be easy to access and not to hurt too much to the patients. That's one thing. So, and also every time, like if you take into account of any disease, their compartment wise and also circulation, sometimes they go opposite. Or that is true for several diseases, what I read. So I think, this is also in case of COPD, it is same.
Yeah.
So in circulation,
I understand, sorry to interrupt, that it's very difficult, sometimes even impossible, to obtain this material from the lungs in patients because it's very invasive. But then again, your chapter 5 was perfect for this research question where you have animals. And then I was a little bit surprised that you just used the whole lung to look at expression of the receptors. Can you think of a better way to look at cell type specific change in the receptors?
Yeah, you can leave it like here. Thank you, Dr. Remels, for your position. And Mrs. Candidate, Mrs. Gopal, the time appointed for the defense of your thesis has passed, and the degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and the way you have defended it. And I ask you and your company to await the results of our deliberation and our return. And I suspend the meeting. So I reopen this academic session. Mrs. Gopal, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and the way you have defended it. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Wouters is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Thank you. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes.
You promise?
Yes, I promise.
Okay. By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present online, I hereby confirm upon you, Poornima Gopal, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, you will soon receive the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the supervisor, affixed with the official seal of the university shown by the beadle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dear Poornima, dear Dr. Gopal, it's a pleasure for me to congratulate you also on behalf of your co-supervisor Nikki Reinhardt with this degree of doctor. Today, you successfully defended your research work started in 2010. Indeed, it was not only a long journey, but what an exceptional journey. It must be a hard and heavy decision for a young Indian lady working as a research assistant at the Indian Institute of Sciences at Bangalore to accept a PhD position in Maastricht, a small town in the southern part of the Netherlands, 7,600 kilometers away from your home. Just before the start of your PhD, you married and your husband facilitated your stay in Maastricht by accepting a position in New York, just 5,900 kilometers away from Maastricht. In 2010, you moved then to the Netherlands, and everything was new for you. The weather, the people, the living conditions, the culture, but you find your way very well and manifested a remarkable resilience. The team of the PhD students working at that time at the Department of Respiratory Medicine created a warm environment around you, and you focused on your research activities and lab work. You did an amazing job to collect the samples of the Ice Age study at Cairo and to combine that with the lab work in Maastricht. In the meantime, you learned biking and swimming, and you appreciated the peace of Limburgse Vlaai. I will always remember our meetings with you and Nikki, and Nikki. As always, you were well prepared, while Nikki challenged you with stimulating remarks and questions. You clearly manifested your affinity for biochemistry and lab work during these meetings, and the scientific work progressed very well, and at the end of the PhD period, you decided for personal reasons to go home to India, but with promises to finish the last chapter and to return as soon as possible for the PhD defense. However, these plans had a different twist. At a certain moment and even in this century of social media and internet, we completely lost contact. Everyone in Maastricht was very concerned, and we tried in many ways to find your coordinates, but without success. It seems a mission impossible, finding a young, smart woman in a country with 1 billion inhabitants. However, after my retirement at the end of the COVID pandemic, I had renewed contacts with colleagues from the University of Bangalore, and they were willing to support me to find you. Within 1 week, I received the coordinates of you, and they arranged a first recontact. You were willing at that time to pick up the preparations of the PhD thesis, and supported by Nikki, you updated the whole manuscript. Today, we can celebrate the successful ending of this unbelievable story. But research is teamwork. We highly appreciated during this period the collaborations with Casper van Schalkwijk and Vincent Monnier for input and analysis of the ages, with Harry Gosker and Giel de Taille for supporting the animal experiments, and Gea Hageman and Erika Rutten for contributing to the aging analysis. I will also thank the members of the review and degree committee for their critical reviews and the participation to this ceremony. During this whole journey, you were surrounded by your family, and in particular, after moving to India, they supported you to finish this thesis. But again, life cannot be forced, and your resilience was challenged again by the need to offer care and support to your loved ones, even in the last weeks before the planned events. I will particularly thank your mother as the driver and motivator of your academic career, and I wish her all the best. I wish to express my sincere thanks to all your family and husband, and I'm sure that also Ren is very proud today. Dr. Gopal, finally time to celebrate this exceptional journey. Nikki and myself wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wouters, for this nice laudation. And dear Dr. Gopal, also on behalf of the University of Maastricht, I congratulate you with the degree you have acquired. I congratulate also your supervisors, Professor Wouters and Dr. Reinhardt, of course, and your family and friends. And I wish you a great day to celebrate it and a wonderful career. I would like to thank the members of the opposition for the work, and of course the members of the technical support team and Joshua Vervelu and the Padel who made this online promotion, this online academic session possible. Having said that, I wish everybody a good day, and I close this ceremony.